and welcome you all to our webinar today titled Get Out the Vote, Strategies for Effective Voter Engagement and Mobilization. My name is Anthony Salas. I am the events director with Welcoming America. And before we do get started, I want to go over just a few quick housekeeping items with you. As always, the webinar is being recorded today, and we'll be sharing a link to the full recording with you in the next few days once we have that all ready to go for you. So look for that coming to you via email. If you know anyone who registered and is not able to join us today, you can let them know that they will also get a link to that recording. So it will be going out to all registrants. In the interest of security and a welcoming environment, if we do have any AI bots joining to record the webinar, we will remove those, again, because we are providing the recording. So if that does come in, if you see that, just know that that will be removed. If you have any technical questions related to the platform, let's use that chat area. And then if you've got specific questions related to the content, please use the Q&A feature, and we will kind of be keeping an eye on that and address your questions at the end of the formal presentation. But you're encouraged to enter your questions at any point as the presentation goes on. All right, for those of you that may not be familiar with Welcoming America, I want to take just a few moments to share a little bit about our organization. We are a national nonprofit that leads a movement of inclusive communities that are working to ensure that everyone belongs and feels that they are a valued contributor to the success of their communities. We are currently, our network has about a little over 300 actually members in it, and it's a mix of nonprofit and government organizations, again, from across the country who are receiving benefits such as expert coaching, strategy planning, and access to many exclusive member events and resources. So if you're interested in learning more about our organization or how to join, I do invite you to go to welcomingamerica.org. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our two amazing speakers that are joining us today. I'm very appreciative of both of them joining us for this hour. First of all, Gilberto Zelaya, who is the Community Engagement Public Relations Officer with the Montgomery County Board of Elections. And quick note, Montgomery County is a member of our network, so great to have a member joining us here today. Gilberto believes that community mobilization and empowerment cannot rest on the pillars of procrastination. It's a great quote that he's got shared with us there. His signature initiative, he's going to share about this in a moment, is called Future Vote, and it's a program that he developed in 2004 to increase current and future voter knowledge, educate, and strengthen ties related to civic participation for Montgomery County's youth and families by actively providing an opportunity for civic duty while emphasizing the importance of preserving participatory democracy. And we're also being joined by Gwen Stembridge, who is the Education and Partnerships Coordinator with Nonprofit Vote. And Gwen has experience as a community organizer, policy analyst, volunteer program manager, and nonprofit professional. Her most recent professional experience has focused on LGBTQ+ education and advocacy at the local, state, and national level at both Equality Ohio and the Trevor Project. And she shared with us that she's excited to bring her community organizing and training background to us today to strengthen the existing training partnership opportunities at Nonprofit Vote and make our democracy more accessible to all. So again, very excited to have both of them joining us today. To kick us off with this great conversation, I want to welcome Gwen to take it from here.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And thank you, everyone, for being here, taking time out of your day and your important work to come learn about voter engagement. I'm excited to share with you. Ready for the next slide? So we're going to talk through voter engagement. So we're going to talk a little bit about our nonprofit power report, a report that came out recently, a little bit about staying nonpartisan, and a little bit of best practices for success, particularly when working with immigrant communities. Next slide. So you may also not be familiar with Nonprofit Vote, but we've been around for almost 25 years now, almost, working with our nation's nonprofits on voting and democracy. So it's all about really building a more inclusive democracy, one where more voices are heard, especially those that are not being heard now. So we really are here to equip you all and make sure you have what you need to be successful. Next slide. What that looks like for us is we have a free national webinar series. It's monthly-ish. We also have a resource library with tools, templates, all of those things. And we do tailored support for partner organizations. We have a field program, so we are on the ground doing this work, learning from folks on the ground, and then taking those best practices and sharing them back out with the community. We also know that this work is built in systems, and we know that if our philanthropy sector is not supporting the work of voter engagement for nonprofits, that we're not going to be able to be successful and have the support that we need. So we also have a philanthropy for voter engagement initiative to ensure that you all as nonprofits have the funding and support that you need from that end. And then we're the lead partner for National Voter Registration Day. If you'll go ahead and mark your calendars for September 17th for National Voter Registration Day, that'd be great. And there'll be more info about that as we go. Next slide. Great. So I never want to come to organizations and give you advice without backing it up with some data and some proof that this actually works and that this is valuable. So I want to start us out by just sharing a little bit about this nonprofit power report. It is still pretty hot off the presses, came out in March of this year. And there's a lot of info you can delve into with that. But what you need to know, what you want to walk away with, is that voters who are engaged by nonprofits are 10 percentage points more likely to actually follow through and vote in the elections. So when you all as nonprofits are engaging voters, that makes them more likely to actually turn out. And again, this is really a nonpartisan initiative. So this is not about turning out voters for a particular candidate. This is about just turning out voters, ensuring that we have more people represented in our democracy. Next slide, please. So there are some gaps in our voter turnout. So this is why this report was necessary. And we know that some of those gaps are along lines of race, income, and age in particular. Those are the ones that this report focuses on. And so if we are not seeing as much representation from those communities, then the policies that are enacted by those elected leaders are not going to be representative of those communities that those elected leaders are supposed to represent. So it's really crucial that we try to narrow those gaps. Next slide, please. So this is the loop, and this is the system as it exists when nonprofits don't engage. And I'm sure many of you are already receiving text messages or phone calls about campaigns, about, there are some elections that are coming up. I know I live in the state of South Carolina. We have an election on June 11th for a lot of our state house and for some congressional seats. There are some primaries. So this is happening. It's not just a November thing, right? But we're getting inundated with messaging. And we're going to get a lot of messaging about the election because it is a presidential election year. So I am one of those people who is kind of looped in, as many of you all are, I'm sure, that you're getting this information from these parties, from organizations. But essentially, the way that this process works is that campaigns are making contact with voters, and voters get not just information about those candidates, but also information about where to vote, when to vote, how, what paperwork they need, what materials they need. And so voters get that information. And so I'm within the positive loop, right? I get that information from a lot of different sources, and then I vote, and then those campaigns are marking me as a likely voter because I have voted in the past. But a lot of times for communities that have not been included in the process, those campaigns are not making contact with those community members. So the campaigns look at voter history, and this is not what or who you have voted for, but this is just whether or not a person has voted. That information is public information, not who you vote for, but whether or not you vote is public information. And so campaigns will look at that and they will say, okay, these are the people who are most likely to vote. And so therefore, these are the people that I'm going to reach out to because they're most likely to vote for me. And so folks who don't vote often get marked as unlikely voters, and then they don't get the same voter information. And this cycle kind of repeats itself. Next slide, please. So what we need is to create a new ecosystem, right? Where nonprofits are engaging and registering folks to vote, making sure that they turn out to vote so that then they are labeled as likely voters. And then those campaigns make contact and we have a more inclusive system. So nonprofits, you all in particular, have the trust, the cultural competency, literally speaking the language in many cases, to engage communities that haven't been engaged effectively before. Next slide, please. So if you want to really dive into the data, if you're a data nerd and want to dive into that, you can access this Nonprofit Power Report here. I'll also share a link in the chat, but wanted to share that with you all, some data. Ready for the next slide. So one more report and piece of data I'll give you here is that we did a survey a couple of years ago of nonprofits to see what percentage of nonprofits did voter engagement. And it's about 1 in 5 or 20%. Some of you may look at that and say, oh, that number is so high. And others may look at that and say, oh, that is way too low. We really need more doing that. And so I look at it and I say, this is a pretty low number. We need more nonprofits to be doing voter engagement work, and especially nonpartisan voter engagement work. So this is part of our work as Nonprofit Vote to ensure that you all have the tools so that you can do that effectively. Next slide. So a little bit about staying nonpartisan. So as you are probably familiar with, as a 501c3 organization, which I trust most of you all are, I'm going to talk primarily about 501c3 organizations. But this also applies if you are if you're working with a 501c3, if you're a volunteer or something else. So organizations are able to engage, do voter engagement generally, but are not able to do that on behalf of any political campaign or in association with a political campaign or a candidate. So that's the IRS tax code language that's there. But so I want to lead with that just so you know what the law is there. But there are so many activities that nonprofits are able to do. Next slide, please. So you can register voters, you can send election reminders, you can distribute nonpartisan candidate guides, you can host candidate forums. If your organization is working on a particular issue, maybe it's related to housing, you can host a candidate forum around housing to see what the various candidates who are running, what they have to say about housing, and so that community members can ask them direct questions about what they're going to do if elected. You can educate voters about the options for voting in person. Some states do have online voter registration, which is really great, and makes that a little bit more accessible. But there are people who still prefer the paper forms, and there are different laws depending on the state that you're in. There are different laws for voting, for registration, and for all of that. So make sure you check your local elections laws there. You can drive people to the polls. Sometimes really the barrier there is that somebody needs a ride to the polls. So you can coordinate that with your organization. You can support or oppose ballot measures. There's some more information on our website about what those are and what that looks like, but those are nonpartisan issues that are not associated with a candidate, but with an issue. And then you can also continue issue advocacy during that election. If you are engaged with an elected leader, you're having conversations about an issue that's important to your community, you can continue to engage with that elected leader. Next slide, please. So this report I share in particular, this came out last year. It's about unlocking the power of immigrant communities. So I'll share the link to this report, but in the next couple of slides, I just pulled out some highlights from it that I want to share with you all today. So next slide, please. So I realize this font actually might be a little bit small as I look at this, but we are going to share this afterward, and I'm happy to, all of this language is in the report. So immigrant families whose country of origin maybe doesn't have a cultural history of voting and democracy. The voting process might be really different where they are coming from, and might not be a value that they have held in the place where they used to live. And so that's something to just really consider when you're reaching out and engaging with immigrant communities. Voters there also might be coming from countries where corruption and extremism are really present, even more so than some of the extremism that we see in the United States. But it's a different culture, right? And so ensuring that you're taking that into consideration and communicating often with people who have experience. You want your messengers to be people who have experience with those communities, who can speak the language, who understand the culture. Community members might be skeptical of candidates or campaigns that drop in to win their vote, but then don't actually listen to their concerns or work to improve conditions for their communities. I think this applies to anybody. I was born here and also am sometimes skeptical of candidates or campaigns that drop in, but don't actually listen to what the community has to say. But one piece that I pulled from this report that I think is really crucial is to emphasize community power instead of messages about individual rights or duties. So really talking about, hey, if we all vote together, here is this power that we can have. And so we have this, we are able to strengthen this pride, this sense of unity in our identity, and then, you know, really have that chance to be visible and represent the community. Next slide, please. The other question that comes up a lot when working with immigrant communities is eligibility for voting. And so often there are immigrants who are in the process of becoming citizens, or who are just working through the paperwork process and are not yet eligible to vote, or may not ever be eligible to vote. So it's really important to just have some trust, have some patience when you're having those conversations, but also to not ignore the fact that community members, even if they are currently unable to vote, they can still participate in the process, right? And they can do voter registration. In many states, they can also, you know, tell their communities, they can talk about the issues that matter, encourage other people to vote. And so that's really crucial as well. This one piece here from the report that says, ensure that the materials are translated accurately, but they also reflect the true meaning of what you're attempting to convey. we realized, that there's all kinds of language barriers. That's not just about the translation of the word, but about the context around that. So ensuring that you have a native speaker who understands the context of that message is really important. And then also you can use graphics and things like that. They're kind of universally understood to really emphasize your meaning, especially if folks are, English is a second language for them and they're learning that. Next slide, please. So then coming back here to National Voter Registration Day, make sure that you have saved the date for September 17th. I believe Welcoming America is going to be a partner if you all are not already with National Voter Registration Day. And so we encourage you to do something that week. It is also Welcoming Week. And so we're excited about that potential to work together there. Next slide, please. And I've got some additional resources that I linked here. Again, I'll put these links in the chat, but we've got a webinar that is in both English. There's one in English and then one in Spanish about staying nonpartisan as a 501c3 nonprofit. There are attorneys on there that are asking and answering questions that you may also have about how to stay nonpartisan. And then also a little bit about what nonprofit staff can say about the election. So for you all as staff as well. Next slide, please. And then if you want to get more resources from us generally, this link is here. You take the nonprofit vote pledge, and then you're added to the list to get information about these toolkits, about webinars that are coming up, and all of that. Next slide, please. And just that's it for me. Thank you all so much. You can follow us on social media and all of that. But we're super grateful to be partners with Welcoming America and glad to be here. I'm going to pass it on to Gilberto Zelaya.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your, what day is it today? Today's Wednesday. We just certified the elections on a Saturday, I believe. So I'm a little kind of off kilter with the dates. But nonetheless, my name is Gilberto Zelaya. I'm the Community Engagement Public Relations Officer here at the Montgomery County Board of Elections in Montgomery County, Maryland. Next slide. So when I joined the Board of Elections in 2003, after the 2000 census, Montgomery County was sued by the Department of Justice, and the consent decree that required the Board of Elections to hire an administrator to look at outreach and engagements, looking at historically disenfranchised communities, and really establish relationships with stakeholders within the community. And so in my background, I come from public health, of creating campaigns and initiatives across the globe, mostly in Latin America, and as far as Durban, South Africa, on issues on HIV/AIDS prevention, gang violence, teen violence, et cetera. What doesn't change is kind of the inroads by working with stakeholders, whether it's a pastor, a priest, an organization, nonprofit, small businesses, the school system. So really look at the different inroads that you could leverage to get a message across. So the focus was under Section 203 is really educate the electorate, the fact that Montgomery County needed to implement Section 203, which means everything's going to be in English and in Spanish. So moving forward, next slide. I was looking at different opportunities where we could engage the electorate. And so that's where the genesis of Future Vote came to be. In Montgomery County, and any year, we will have about 10,000 high school students graduating. In Maryland, there's a requirement to accumulate 75 community service hours before you graduate. Having said that, you're looking at this pipeline of a lot of young individuals, maybe who really weren't introduced to the electorate beyond what was taught in history class, government class, NSL government, et cetera. Also, I noticed that nationally, they were lowering the age to register to vote and or serve as an election worker or poll worker or election judge from 18, 17, 16. So looking at this opportunity, when I thought about Future Vote, was really looking how we could initiate or start a program where it really looks at participatory democracy and what that means, not just for the registered voter. Obviously, individuals must meet the requirements to register to vote, but at many times it's a very passive process. You go to the Motor Vehicles Administration, you register to vote at a community event or a partisan event. That's pretty much it, right? They'll tell you, are you your age? Are you a citizen? You live in the particular state? We would love for you to register to vote. And then that's it, right? And so other than what a sample ballot the local boards of elections will send, there's really no kind of active participation with the electorate. So not just thinking about individuals who are coming of age to register, I really brought them all the way as young as middle school. And a lot of times individuals think, well, why would a child, what would they do inside of a polling place at 12 years of age? That doesn't make any sense. They're too young, right? But you'll be kind of surprised. Next slide. And so with the Future Vote program, really looking at participatory democracy, we've been blessed and we've worked with over 50,000 families and youth. Next slide. And 35,000 families. And which is interesting about the program, the only requirement is that you are a youth that lives in Montgomery County, Maryland. We do have students who go to private schools, maybe in Virginia or the District of Columbia. Really, the age group is anyone from 6th grade to 12th grade. And also, U.S. citizenship is not a prerequisite because these students are not voting. They're not registered to vote. And we'll get into more of the nuances of what they do at each polling place. And we've also expanded to service during our 8 days of early voting at our 14 centers. Next slide. And so once the guardian applies into the program, the parent will choose the polling place in which they would like to serve and a particular shift. So we have 10 shifts. They start early as 6 in the morning and they end up till 9 p.m. The shifts are 3 hours long. We allow 2 students per shift. We have about 250 polling places and 14 early voting centers over 8 days. So when you look at how many slots, you're looking at over 2,500 slots. And so the prerequisite for a student to participate in the program, they must attend mandatory training with their guardian. At this training, we talk about the ins and outs of what the student will do. But in addition to this training, it's 1 hour long, it's 60 minutes. We talk about these different topics: how to register to vote, what's your responsibility after registering to vote. We're really big on voter maintenance. What are the avenues, whether it's paper, in person, at an event. I developed a series of texting prompts that they could use their cell phone to register to vote, to request a mail-in ballot, to locate the closest early voting center, to get the wait times, to identify the election day polling place, to serve as an election worker. So there's a whole menu of commands that we have leveraged, and we've also developed an app. And so beyond the voter registration, what's the difference? So what are the nuances between voting by mail during early voting or on election day? How to leverage voting by mail? What is provisional voting? For some reason, people think that's the bad P word, but it's kind of a mechanisms in which that it really secures the franchise, because remember, you're only technically allowed to vote once per election, whether it's a primary or the general. But at the same time, if there's some administrative errors or maybe you're in the wrong polling place, our job as election administrators and as volunteers, as poll workers, is not to turn anyone away if they're at the polls. So you have provisional voting. So we teach them about what that is. How to leverage a sample ballot. What's a sample ballot? We talk about Section 203 and the language provisions. We talk about the premise of your child as a middle school kid. My intention is that as they age through the program, once they're 16, and if they meet the state requirements to serve as a poll worker, which is essentially 16 years of age, be a citizen and live in Maryland, as opposed to earning community service credits, now I could pay you. So students are like, show me the money, right? I want to serve, I want to provide, get some community service or the stipend. And then we talk about the future vote expectations. and kind of the premise of starting your efforts as a future vote ambassador. And the goal is, as you hit that age, we will love, my intention is for me to promote you to election worker or poll worker or election judge status. But of course, you have to do an online quiz. It's more involved. There's an in-person component, and there's the bells and whistles. And that's the reason why we do offer the stipend as an option. For those students who are older than 16 who don't meet the requirements, especially the citizenship requirements, they could continue serving as a future vote ambassador until they reach 12th grade. But what we've noticed, 75% of our future vote ambassadors are middle school kids, and 25% are essentially 9th and 10th graders. We have a few 11th and 12th graders. They want the SSL, or maybe they don't meet the state requirements to be a poll worker, or really they don't see themselves working 15 hours, right, on election day. So we give them the opportunity for SSL. Next slide. So the early voting and election day support, we have a very diverse county. Historically, we usually have the 3 or 4 the most diverse cities in America for the last decade and change, which are Gaithersburg, Germantown, Silver Spring, Rockville. And that's a benefit also because within these students, as they come of age, they also reflect the community in which they serve at the polling place level. Next slide. And so what do they do? So on Monday evening, it's another prerequisite that they attend the Monday evening precinct setup or polling place setup with their guardian. They discuss allergies, any health issues, any food restrictions. They familiarize themselves with the polling place, exits, bathrooms. They note the precinct numbers. They help out with the setups. They're giving the schematics, and as you can tell by the image, they're building the voting booths, and they put the tables and the chairs, following the schematics that we provide to our chief election judge. Next slide. And some of the service tasks that they do on election day is obviously be polite and smile. This is one of the first opportunities, especially kind of strengthening those soft skills. My son, Sebastian, was a freshman during 2020 when, remember, we were all hiding because of COVID. And so a lot of these students, this is the first opportunity that they're engaging outside their households, outside their inner circle, that sanctum with their best friends, BFFs, their parents. And these are individuals coming into the polling place who they may or may not be familiar because they're working at the precinct neighborhood level. They acknowledge the voters, they inform voters of prohibited activities, no smoking, vaping, etc. And they'll ask the chief judge if there's any assistance that they need. They ensure that the polling place is clean, there's no partisan literature left in the voting booths. There's a whole menu of tasks that they could do, but full disclosure, they do not touch ballots and they do not touch equipment. However, if there's a student with bilingual skills and that bilingual competency, and if the voter deems it necessary and the student identifies themselves having fluency, they can help out. They will fill out the voter assistance form in the presence of both the Democratic and Republican chief judge, and they follow the instructions. And that training, this is also discussed about the possibility of assisting the voter. Then we have the exit position, right? They distribute the I voted sticker or the Yo voté sticker. They encourage individuals to serve as an election worker, or they'll ask the student, like, how did you get involved? And they'll say, I'm a future voter. Here's a sign-up sheet. You're more than welcome to sign your child up. And Dr. Z will contact you from the Board of Elections with registration instructions. And then once again, to keep the polling place free of partisan literature clutter. So it kind of helps the incidentals, because the one thing that irks our chief judges is being asked 100 times, where's the restroom? But the student knows is down the hall to the right. They're able to triage a lot of the little kind of low-hanging fruit so that our adult poll workers could focus on servicing our voters. Next slide. And so additional tasks, they collect recycled pens, they keep the entrance and exit clear, they make sure that they meet ADA requirements, they collect the privacy sleeves. As I mentioned, they provide bilingual assistance if needed. We focus on beware of inflection, right? When you're reading that ballot, plain, don't emphasize a candidate's name. Do not translate a candidate's name in your native language, just say that as appears in English. And full disclosure, this is actually my son. So this is Sebastian. He's a rising senior. He'll be graduating this year. So this was him in middle school. And this is him in the 2020 election as he was a 10th grader, 11th grader. He served in the primary as a poll worker and also as a drop box attendant. So, he really he had no choice. He had to immerse himself in the program, right? But he really enjoyed, and in his school, it really got him engaged. And while he was in high school, at least in the presence, when he was a sophomore, junior, and senior, he registered over 500 students to vote and recruited over 300 students to serve as poll workers. And so it was this kind of opportunity, kind of the peer-to-peer mentoring. And now my son, Julian, he's a freshman, so he's passing the torch to Julian. So then unfortunately, Clarksburg High School will be short once Julian graduates, but we'll make sure to pass the torch when it's his time. Next slide. And we visit all the high schools, both private and parochial and public. We've registered over 25 high school students to vote. Next slide. And also within those students and within those in Future Vote, we've recruited or promoted over 10,000 high schoolers to serve as election workers. Next. And like I mentioned, these students are bilingual, they're tech savvy, they have boundless energy, they got good knees, good backs. One of the things is interesting. I tell my son, they're on their phones before they brush their teeth. So these kids, when they look up voters on the touch screens, there's a funny story. We had a check-in table with 5 individuals. The 2 students in the corner were high schoolers, or both 16. And then the first 3 were, are more seasoned poll workers. And all of a sudden I walked in and they're like, Dr. Z, I have a concern. These kids are going way too fast. They're checking in voters like, 1 a second. And I think they're making mistakes. I'm like, well, you have to understand that the voters are affirming their voter authority card and they're signing off their name, the party affiliation, and their address. They're just quicker, And so it was kind of weird because then I took the students onto the side and I'm like, can you slow down? Because the adult judges felt intimidated, right? But I say, if you see that the line has died down, just slow down, because it is kind of intimidating when you have a seasoned poll worker in their 60s, and you have a 16-year-old, just for every 2 that you do, they're doing 10, right? So it is stressful. So it was something that I didn't really envision, but it's something that we teach both our seasoned judges and our high school poll workers. Next slide. And as I mentioned, between 25 to 45% of each of our polling places have bilingual competency. So if there's a polling place in Silver Spring, beyond Spanish, because it's required by the Department of Justice, we have students that will speak Amharic, Korean, French, because they really reflect within the feeder program, within the feeder schools to that high school and to their neighborhood. So we really benefited, especially with the language competency, beyond the legal consent decree by the Department of Justice. And this also includes American Sign Language. Next slide. And the measurements, that's what you want, right? So I was kind of astonished, and I ran the report again before I sent the slides. I wanted to make sure they were correct. So if you look at the numbers, this is from 2022. If you look on top, right, so our students, those are 16 and 17, the average poll worker force nationally is about 1.7%. In the state of Maryland is 2.6. Montgomery County was 9.9. So a little under 10% of our poll worker force in 2022 were 16 and 17-year-olds. For the primary, and I call this pre-audit, because right now we're doing our payroll. So, we have a X number of students or volunteers. We run our age report. We assign them a polling place, right? But right now we're getting back our payroll because sometimes people don't show up to serve. Maybe they have a wisdom tooth they need to pull out. It's like kid things, right? So things that you don't take in consideration when you're recruiting a high school poll worker force. And so what happens is until that audit is done, as of 2 days ago or yesterday, 14% of our poll worker force for the current primary election that we just certified on Saturday was 14%. And that's a big chunk. Our 18 to 25 are 10%. And when you do the breakdown, if you go down, if you look at the cohort 16 to 25, it's almost a fourth, 23%, right? That's a large component of our youth participating. And one thing, we do have a large community college system, Montgomery College, and a lot of our high schoolers will then go to community college or University of Maryland, our state school, and they come back to serve in the fall. And so we've seen this really kind of gateway of the younger electorate participating even before they're old enough to vote. And as of the other day, our average age of our poll worker for the primary pre-audit is 50, while the national average in 2022 was 61. So we're less than a decade, right? We have a young poll worker force. And the mechanism works because, like I mentioned, every academic year, up to 10,000 high schoolers are graduating. We have about 160,000 students in our public school system. We have about 1.1, 1.2 million residents. And we have this pipeline that introduces our youth prior to serving as a poll worker through the Future Vote Initiative, and has been an incredible recruitment tool. Because, as I stated kind of within the slides, it's an opportunity to really kind of introduce participatory democracy, about the importance of having 10 pencils rubber band into a batch, right? Why do we have these signage? Why are the booths separating within the distance? Why is the flow or the schematic of our polling place as such? And so the kids really understand, beyond registering to vote, what is my responsibility as a voter? And a lot of these students, I'll get a bunch of emails, about, I'm voting by mail from California, I'm in the military, I've joined the workforce. And which was kind of interesting in 2020, when there was this national call to action, because there was this deficiency of poll workers, and it kind of showed how long I've been here. A lot of young 20, mid 20-year-olds were coming back because they were like, hey, Dr. Z, I had to move back in with my parents from the West Coast. I got nothing to do. I don't have a job. I see you need poll workers. I'm coming back. And so I really didn't think of that component when I started Future Vote 2 decades ago, of our young adults coming back to service into their young adulthood. So we've reaped the benefits of the program. Next slide. And thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. This has been an amazing presentation from both of you. Appreciate both of you sharing here. So what we're going to do now, of course, is move into some questions. And I'm actually going to stop screen sharing here. So give me a moment. So everyone is on screen. Do quick pinning. And we did have some questions here that came through. Yep, lost one of you. From our audience. And again, I just want to remind everyone that if you've got a question, use either the chat area or the Q&A, and we will address those. But let's move into that now. So our first question came in a little earlier in the chat, and Gwen, I think this is one that probably you can address. And this kind of goes to a note that I took as well when you were talking about the different things that nonprofits can share. And one of the questions that came in is an example of, is this something that could be shared? And the question being, can we say that people, or we want people to vote to ensure our democracy continues? If that question is asked, is that considered nonpartisan? Is that an okay question to ask?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I will preface this with saying I am not an attorney and this is not legal advice. And I will also direct you to our webinar and then also some some tools that I'll put in the chat here related to that. But in general, I look at this as with flags. You folks are talking a lot about like red flags and green flags with like relationships or all kinds of things. So I kind of use that framework. And the way that the IRS looks at it is through a process called facts and circumstances. So it's really they don't make it easy to determine, what is partisan and what is nonpartisan, but they will look at the facts and circumstances around a situation. So they'll, for instance, if you're hosting a candidate forum and you have invited candidates from both parties, but only one of them shows up, as long as you have given equal opportunities for those candidates to show up and equal, communication and all of that, you are okay and you're good to go. There would be some flags, for instance, if you don't invite both, right? That's one of those. So I think there are some issues that by nature are not partisan, but have become part of a partisan narrative recently. And so the word democracy, I think often, while we should all engage in our democracy, I think there are aspects of that have, become kind of elevated terms that are sometimes associated with being partisan in nature. But to answer, that was a long answer to say, I think if your language is saying we want people to vote, to participate in our democracy and ensure that our democracy continues, generally that should not be controversial and should be considered nonpartisan. I would just look at the context surrounding it to see, how many flags there are around that. Long answer, but hope that's helpful.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that. Gilberto, anything to add to that from your perspective?
No, I think one of the things that we focus on, at least with our Future Vote families, is the premise of we don't care your affiliation, we don't care your position, we do care that you vote. We do talk about budgets, and we say, look, a lot of times individuals will look at the ROI and individuals may complain. So for example, in this election, we had about a 24% turnout. Our organization has like a $12-13 million budget. And I tell the guardians, you're paying for the election essentially, right? And my job is to ensure that the doors open at 7 a.m. on election day. So there's a point where as an agency, as a servant, I will serve your plate of democracy, but it's not my job to chew it for you. You have to show up. And then we tell our students that, which is funny, in our training, I say, kids, you got my permission to annoy your parents, and you make sure they show up to vote if they meet the state requirements, right? And so I'll get a bunch of texts. I pestered my dad to vote. I annoyed my mom to death, and she voted, and they'll send me I voted sticker picture. And I'm like, great, that's your job, you do your part and I will do mine, and together we're a good team. But regardless on your positioning, that's between you and yourself.
Pester the parents. Something that came to mind for me when you were sharing too, and I love the drive with the youth and really getting them engaged and excited for their future when they can vote and when they can really become active in this. But my question is more around like with the election this year coming up, the fall election. I'm wondering if, as part of your orientation to the program, you mentioned some of the different things that you go through to get everyone set up for that. Is there any discussion around the potential for poll worker intimidation? And I'm thinking, these younger individuals, there could be that concern from a parent. And so are you preparing, or is that something you've already kind of got into place that you can guarantee some sort of safeguards?
Yeah, we do talk about that's one of the topics that we discuss, because the guardians do contact us and we tell them we work with the local authorities, Homeland Security, the local police, Montgomery County Police. Also, if there's a polling place, within a municipality like Rockville or Gaithersburg, we are in constant communication with them as well. And recently, Governor Wes Moore signed into legislation the Election Official Protection Act of 2024, where there's some concise, concrete, fees and jail time if any type of intimidation. And that's also extended not just to me as an official, as a county employee, but also our election workers and our future vote ambassadors. So it's inclusive language, any type of intimidation. But we do tell the parents that, we're in constant contact. And I tell them, if you have any concerns, we would love for your child to serve. But if it's not your child's cup of tea, if you have concerns, then there's other opportunities. There's other engagement opportunities at the Board of Elections. One thing I didn't share that we used to do prior to 2020, the pandemic, we will bring in students to help us with some of the deliverables, the alphabetizing of process voter registration to get scanned, the packaging of rubber bands and pencils and the signage. They also do outreach for us at the different community centers, and they would distribute early voting literature the weekend before the onset of early voting at all of our metro stations in Montgomery County. We're going to start revving that up again. Number one, because the issue of COVID, right? A lot of families have extended family members, and I didn't want to risk, their grandparents, especially if they're going out into the community. But then also the component of intimidation and concern for the child's well-being, and we also embrace that as well as a legitimate concern. But we're in a good spot. And I tell them, we're not one of the other states that they'll be on, they're not going to be named, but, we do take it seriously, and safety is first and foremost. And that's the reason we'll tell an individual, if you have concerns, but as a voter perspective, not as a volunteer, then you could always vote by mail.
Great. Thank you for that. I appreciate you responding to that. Gwen, I see you responded to a question that came in through the chat, but I do want to put that out for everyone, and maybe you can expand a little bit upon it, because I think it's a question that others might be interested in. So just to share for everyone, the question is, this individual says they love the framing of something you had said, which was sometimes citizenship is the first step in voter registration work. So again, they were just asking, is there more you can share around that, and any specific programs or orgs that you had in mind? And I know you put into the chat some links associated with that question, but just giving you an opportunity there if you want to expand on anything.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a great question, and the report has a lot in there. And we work on the ground with in 8 states this year, but organizations on the ground working with immigrant communities. There are a couple organizations that work specifically there. And one of the things that has come up is when working with those immigrant communities, often people get excited about voting, and it's really important to ensure that they are going through all of the steps and all of the processes that they need to go through to get citizenship before they participate in voting. We had a community organization that said they had flagged a couple of community members who had gotten their citizenship paperwork, but had not yet been to the ceremony yet. And so they weren't officially citizens and weren't actually able to vote yet, but they were trying to register to vote. And so just being aware of those, whatever the laws are in your state is really important. And I saw earlier as folks were introducing themselves that there's a lot of libraries. And so I know a lot of you all who work at libraries are trusted resources for all kinds of things. But I really encourage you to, I'll put a link to, we have a state-by-state guide for voter information and for voter registration and all of that. And it's being updated now. So if it looks like it's out of date, there are updates coming in the next couple weeks, but I'll share that out so that you can look at the individual laws for your state. Just encourage you to be aware of those.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I do want to stay, again, aware of everyone's time, and I know we're approaching the top of the hour. Also, Gilberto shared that unfortunately he's got a thunderstorm in his area. And so before we lose him, I do want to address another question that came through that I think I wanted to ask, and I'm sure others are thinking as well, is as you were giving your examples of the amazing work around Future Vote, if someone wants to do something of that sort in their own community, is there any kind of a resource that you have or any information you can share that someone can do to, copy the great work you've done?
No, most definitely. You definitely reach out. I know that there is a white paper in 2018. We got an award from the Election Assistance Commission on the work on future vote and recruitment. So the whole blueprint is right there. And at any time you could reach out. My recommendation would be start small. During the 2004 presidential primary, we identified the 50 largest polling places. And then there was a lot of resistance from our election workers, like now we're running a babysitting service. Why do we have these children? And then once the primary occurred, they're like, are they coming back? I need more, right? So then we expanded to all the polling places and then to early voting as well. But you could always definitely share my contact information, and we could chat, and I'll send you what we have and start small. And just from there, you'll see how it benefits not only the electorate, but also your organization as an engagement tool. We saw the number of provisional voting decrease. We saw an increase of participation within communities of colors and within multicultural community. And then we saw an increase of language competency and cultural competency at the polling place level, because when I joined, it was very homogeneous. It was very black and white, but the county was diverse already. Now it's extremely diverse because the program really reflects the kind of the electorate at that grassroots polling place level.
Amazing. And again, just, what a benefit for those young individuals to really get into this, and I'm sure will be featured just like your son. That was amazing to see. Well, again, thank you both so much. This has been incredibly informative and I think helpful to all of us. So thank you for sharing your time. I know there's a lot going on for both of you right now. This is, we're kicking into high gear. You've probably been in it for quite some time. So we truly appreciate it. I also want to reference to something that Gwen had mentioned. So yes, National Voter Registration Day, September 17th, is smack dab in the middle of Welcoming Week. So we, I think, have mentioned this before, but what a great opportunity, to, as you're celebrating Welcoming Week and holding your events, incorporate some sort of a voter registration push and such there. We are a partner in National Voter Registration Day, Welcoming America is. And so those of you that are members, you'll start seeing some information shared in the member forum, our weekly updates that we send out with links to the various resources, tools. There's a lot of great information in there. So we'll be sharing that out with everyone. So look for that coming your way. Also, a quick reminder, as I said at the beginning, this is being recorded. So this will be going out to everyone. I think someone did ask, can I share the recording with individuals in my organization? By all means, please do. If this is helpful, or if you see this would be helpful for anyone else, please do share this. We would love to just help spread the word. So please do that. We'll get that out to you in the next few days. And also we'll be including the links that were referenced on the slides and during the discussions. So if you have any questions, hopefully you can find the answers in those links. If not, reach out to us. So again, thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Gilberto. Appreciate both of you very much. Thank you all to our audience, our attendees, for taking time from your day to share some time with us. We hope this was helpful for you, and we'll be bringing some more election webinar series webinars to you in the next few months or so. So look for information on that probably when we send this recording out. So thank you all again. Have a great afternoon and a great rest of your week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.